Not only are the mics hot, but hopefully the Broncos have some sizzle on the field. Like your chicken fajita, Mace.
That was
Here we
good.
go. Counting down the hits. Broncos Commanders, can they do it? Will they do it? Must they do it? I don't know. Are you like D-Mac where he hates must win? Are you a must win guy?
It's like the term great. It gets overused.
Okay.
Now, there is a stat that I put out there. It's at denversports.com if you want to read about it, which shows that it pretty well may be close to a must-win situation here, even in week 2, because the historical trends for teams that open 0-2 with both those losses being at home are pretty bad.
Yes. Yeah. And denversports.com is where you check it out. But I believe only Joe Burrow in the modern playoff structure, only the Bengals have been the 0-2 team that make the postseason. Like, you don't want to be 0-2.
Well, and that's 0-2 just home or away. I went deeper and said, what are the teams that lost 2 straight games to open the season at home and started 0-2? And there are 51 of those teams in the Super Bowl era. Only 2 of them made the playoffs: the 1987 Colts and the 2003 Eagles.
Wow.
So 2 out of 51 made the playoffs.
And rolling into town are the Washington Commanders. And our first topic on Orange Blue today, presented by Sean Ponda. The Commanders are better than you think. Sam Howell specifically, if you've watched this show for any amount of time, you've heard Mace and I talk about Sam Howell, hoping that the Broncos would have taken him before the draft and lamenting the fact that they didn't after the draft. Sam Howell, everyone says 2 games, the guy's going to be loose with the ball. Yes, but he's also a damn good quarterback, and you got to watch out this week.
He's a damn good quarterback, and he's damn good with his legs as well. And that's the conundrum of Sam Howell, is that the legs are what get him in trouble because he's trying to extend plays, and that's what leads to some of the turnovers, like the fumble that he had last week against the Arizona Cardinals, which led to Arizona's only touchdown on a fumble recovery. But it is that escapability, that capability to operate beyond the structure of a play, the improvisational ability that he possesses. And frankly, I mean, this is just going to sound very, very cliched, the never say die mindset that he has out there. The fact that he won't give up on a play means he's going to get himself in trouble sometimes because of that he's going to scramble himself into trouble. But it also leads to some dynamic plays for the Washington offense. And some of that is him with his legs as well, just like he did at North Carolina. So he's an interesting quarterback who very much, if he's going to make a leap to being one of the better quarterbacks in the league, he's going to have to kind of temper his game a little bit, channel it. He's going to have to learn when to take a sack. The Peyton Manning self-sack, he could have used that.
Yeah, Sam Howell doesn't know that yet.
He hasn't learned that.
The Broncos defense advantaged you if you can take one of those picks or one of those fumbles with a scoop and score or a pick six. The opportunities will be there much, much different than they were with Jimmy Garoppolo, who was getting rid of the ball quickly, very safe, very efficient. Howell's going to hold on to it. He's going to try to sling it downfield, so get him.
Well, it also puts a greater challenge on the defensive backfield as well. The strain there, because the receivers are going to break off their routes and things are going to happen beyond structure. Yeah, this is a really interesting game. Now, because of that, I think you will see the Broncos in the pass rush. They're going to try to contain Sam Howell. They're going to try to keep him in the pocket. That's something that Zach Allen talked about in the locker room on Wednesday. They don't want him getting outside the pocket where he can take off and make something happen. They want to keep him constrained there, keep him moving around, but that's where I think they want to unsettle him and make him uncomfortable.
Right. And that's where potentially he's going to be looking for those outlet receivers, and they've got quite a few. I don't even know where to begin when we talk about their weapons, because they can run the ball. Even though Antonio Gibson barely touched the ball last week, he can run and catch the ball. He's a converted receiver playing running back. So, like, wherever you want to begin, Mace, we've got a conversation about all of these weapons. Terry McLaurin practicing fully. Jahan Dotson probably against Damari Mathis. And I know that Damari played well against him in college. That was 2019, baby. I'm talking about right now. Dotson can make those plays. Curtis Samuel can make plays. Logan Thomas, when he's healthy, not that often, but when he's healthy, he can make plays. So no matter where you pick on this Commanders offense, you can find a player that can be problematic for this Broncos defense.
Right. And you look at them and what they did. They very much spreading the ball around last week. Curtis Samuel with 54 yards on 5 receptions. Logan Thomas, 43 yards on 4 receptions. Jahan Dotson, 40 yards on 5 receptions. Terry McLaurin, 31 yards on 2 receptions. And Antonio Gibson, like you mentioned, barely involved, only 3 carries and 1 reception for 10 yards as well. You imagine they'll try to incorporate him a little bit more. Brian Robinson Jr., not really an impressive game in week 1. I think they're gonna want to try to get him on track as well.
Yeah, had the receiving touchdown. Howell's only touchdown of the day was actually a play that he extends, waits till the last second, takes a shot while he's throwing it, hits Robinson in the end zone. Robinson not necessarily known as a pass catcher, more of a plugger between the tackles.
Yeah, and taking the shot is also part of Sam Howell's game. Again, he's going to fight until the last. That it's not just that he's going to put the ball on the ground sometimes that you're concerned about. If you're Washington, you're also concerned about Sam Howell staying healthy long term because he's going to take some hits. He took some hits at North Carolina as well.
Yes.
That's going to accumulate over time. So there are concerns there. I asked Sean Payton about Sam Howell today, and he alluded to kind of some of the intangibles that Sam Howell has as well, as far as leadership, getting guys to kind of believe, get everybody
right
in the huddle together.
Lots of moxie.
Yeah, that's probably the way you describe Sam Howell as a quarterback who has a lot of moxie, but also has a lot of leadership ability. And that goes back to college. I mean, here you had a guy who was on a team in 2021. He lost basically all their skill position players to the NFL draft.
Yeah, including Javonte.
Their offensive line was a mess. Their defense was terrible. So they're in shootout after shootout. And this was a dude who never pointed the finger.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was clear that the team around him wasn't all that great, but there was never any sniping. It was always all for one for all. He fell in the draft after that season.
No throwing anyone under the bus.
Yes.
When he was seen as a number 1 overall pick.
And he dropped to the top of the 5th round.
Yes.
In part because of everything kind of going on around him. And look, sometimes in the draft, we get overreactions to seasons, overreactions to circumstances. Personally, I thought Sam Howell was still around 1 level quarterback even after that season. Most in the draft disagree, which is why he fell to round 5. But that's also part of why when he got to round 4, day 3 of the draft in 2022, and he's still on the board, the conversation needed to be, okay, we weren't expecting Sam Howell to be there. He is. Stylistically, he's kind of a perfect backup to Russell Wilson because their styles as young quarterbacks are very similar to each other.
Yeah. Edward brings that up in the chat room. Like, isn't Howell similar to Russell Wilson?
There's a lot of there's a lot of similarities between Sam Howell at this stage and Russell Wilson when he was a young quarterback as well. I thought it would have been a perfect match as the 1 and the 2.
Mm-hmm.
And that would have been an interesting conversation this year.
It would be because Howell is better than Jarrett Stidham.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say you should be, always trying to improve the backup spot. The backup spot did improve from Brett Rippon to Jarrett Stidham. There's no doubt about that.
Right.
Was there another level you could have gotten to as a backup quarterback in terms of the quality therein? Yes. You could have drafted Sam Howell last year, but instead in the 4th round, they took Enia Wazirike, who is now suspended for violations of the gambling policy. And that's the least of his concerns because he's got an indictment back in Iowa tied to gambling stuff. So,
problemas.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to play the Isaiah Pacheco, Tariq Woolen told you so game.
I don't ever play that.
You actually haven't mentioned those names in a minute here.
Like a day.
Yeah. I don't like to play the what if game because, look, there are a lot of guys that I champion in the draft that turned out to be busts. I have as many whiffs as anybody, right? But once Sam Howell was falling in the draft, I'm like, oh, man.
The math was there.
Just the value's there. Just pick him and see where he goes. Hey, last year, if Sam Howell's in there against the Jets in week 7, I think the Broncos win that game.
Yeah, Broncos can win that type of game with that type of quarterback.
And then they're 4-4 at the bye instead of 3-5. You might have changed everything.
There's another what if.
Yeah.
Maybe coming to YouTube near you.
Would Nathaniel Hackett still be the head coach of the team?
Ooh, would you want that?
Where would Aaron Rodgers have gone if reuniting with Nathaniel Hackett wasn't a possibility?
Right. The world may never know.
It
is very interesting. Orange Blue today, we're presented by Sean Ponda. Any other player you'd like to highlight? Because Thomas can be a problem. I believe, and I've told a lot of fantasy GMs, start Jahan Dotson because he's going to go against Amari. It's going to happen. He's going to get targeted. But Curtis Samuel complicates it because there's 2 guys that you get. Curtis Samuel's a hell of a ball player.
He's a hell of a ball player. And that being said, very encouraged by Isang Bassey in the slot last week. And so if Bassey is lined up against Curtis Samuel, I think Bassey's going to hold up. I think
Bassey gets a pick this week after missing out on last week.
Yeah. That'll be interesting to watch as the next few weeks go to see if Damari Mathis can't put it back together and you get K'Wan Williams back from injured reserve probably later on next month. What do? Do you consider moving Bassey outside? Because right now he looks pretty good, looks the part. But it is only one game for Damari Mathis. We know he's got a short memory that you have to have as a corner. So let's see if he puts it together this week. He's going to be under fire. He'll be under fire until he proves that he can shut down an opponent.
Right. We shall see what happens as we move on. Lil Jordan may have a larger role. At least we think. Somebody's got to, right?
Lil Jordan, big role.
Lil Jordan, big role.
Well, now, and the thing is, if you're going to do it right, you need the apostrophe between big and roll, like the apostrophe between Lil and Jordan. That's that. Sorry, I think I tweeted that out. A big play for Lil Jordan. I put big apostrophe play.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like all the puns I had when Dearness Johnson ran over the Broncos back in 2021.
Devastating.
D apostrophe devastating. Yes. There was no D apostrophe offense. There's no defense against Dearness Johnson. I unloaded. Yeah. I unloaded the gun, fired all the bullets in that case because I'm a nerd.
Yes. You got to nerd out how you nerd out.
But yeah, Lil Jordan, I think, is going to have a big role, and I'd watch for him to have a big role in the red zone as well. Effectively, he's going to be a part, I suspect, of replacing Greg Dulcich.
Yes, and I think that comes down to multiple players, not just one. But Lil Jordan is certainly on that list. Adam Troutman is on that list. Like, you've got some interesting options if you're the Denver Broncos. I know we've gotten fan questions about Lucas Kroll. Not yet. But the size is there. Oh my God, that dude's huge.
Size is there, but he's got to learn the offense.
Yes.
He hasn't been around. So give him time.
So Lil Jordan, more Troutman, we'll get to Jerry Jeudy in just a little bit, but there's some different options because you have to. You don't have Greg Dulcich, and well, we know last week based on the comments, Dulcich was going to be a big part of what they were doing.
Mm-hmm. The other thing also, as we go down to it, the domino effect is that you'll probably see more snaps from Nate Adkins, the undrafted rookie out of South Carolina, who was inactive last week, but looks to be getting a jersey this time around. And lo and behold, Cecil and I caught up with Nate Adkins in the locker room this afternoon. Is the video ready to go?
It's ready to go.
All right, roll that beautiful bean footage. Expecting to play Sunday, and if so, kind of what are your expectations?
Yeah, I was telling him earlier, I was like, it sucks that somebody like me, I come up, but it's for the loss of, Greg, of him being hurt. So I feel bad for him, but I'm just going to do my best to, be as ready as I can mentally and physically.
What kind of challenge does Washington present when you're involved in run blocking and pass pro?
Yeah, their front, their defensive line is elite of the elite. So, you're going to have to be on your game and, is locked into all your keys and everything, and be, just communicate with all the other tight ends and the O-line, just try to be on the same page.
Nate, which one is your favorite? Because you're kind of a fullback, H-back, tight end. Do you have a favorite position to play? Or just
no, not really. It's kind of just whatever they tell me to do. Whatever they tell me to do, I'll try to get the job done.
Is is there a skill set that you want to particularly improve on over the course of the year? Is it just you want to get better in every way, shape, or
Definitely better in every way, because I can get better definitely in blocking, and then definitely in receiving, route running, and all that. But I mean, if I had to pick one, obviously receiving, just try to get better at that. But I need to get better at everything. So
have they challenged you to kind of get in the weight room, add some weight? Like, how have they work with you on that side of things?
Yeah, I think just personally, like on my that's how I've always been. Like I've always kind of been a smaller and like not as strong as the guy in front of me, but I try to get the job done in any way I can. But I want to try to get that to change a little bit and get stronger and everything. But it's a work in progress.
How do you get that weight room work done during the season with everything else going on? How do you kind of keep training in that regard?
Yeah, it's definitely tough, but it's just one of those things you just got to be consistent at. Just every single day, chop at it. Whether it's something little or something big, you just got to keep doing it and be consistent every day.
And there we have him, Nate Adkins, talking about his potential role this week for the Denver Broncos. So Adkins, Troutman, Lil Jordan Humphrey. There's going to be some auxiliary players, not named Cortland Sutton or perhaps even Jerry Jeudy, that are catching passes from Russell Wilson this week.
Yeah, spreading it around, and that's okay. That's fine. You'll keep the defense off guard on its heels. What I also want to see is you do need an explosive threat vertically in the passing game, and I would like to see if the presence of Jeudy draws some safety coverage to that side and sets up a one-on-one shot for Cortland Sutton down the sideline.
Okay.
That may be a way for you to get the explosive component that you need in this offense, is setting up a Cortland Sutton one-on-one jump ball, which he's got a pretty good chance of either winning or potentially drawing a pass interference penalty.
And I have a feeling that Cortland's really hungry for that. Again, not in talking to him or any sort of practice thing, but I just feel like you set it up with Jeudy, because if you look at his reception perception, again, shout out Matt Harmon, who does great work. Jerry Jeudy has hardly any success, one of the worst in the league on go routes. That's not his game. His game is that slant. It's a comeback, like it's shorter stuff that he can turn into long games. That's where you get explosion from with Jerry Jeudy. But setting up Cortland Sutton, it might only be a couple of times, but that's a welcome couple of times for Broncos fans.
It's a welcome couple of times, and it's going to draw the safeties back a bit. It's going to keep them honest if you can make that happen. So that is a way to get explosive. You mentioned Jerry Jeudy after the catch. That's another way to get explosive plays. And I'd like to see them try to get Jaleel McLaughlin involved again. It was a brief shot that he had last week. Yeah.
And it didn't work, and then they just went away from it. I'm like, it can work. Do it again. Yeah. Do it again.
If you get better blocking, I think it can work.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's got it. But as we've seen, Jaleel McLaughlin, if you give him a chance, I think he's going to be able to make an explosive play a lot of the games. And I think they'll go back to it at some point. And also, I'm curious to see with Javonte Williams, his workload, if he doesn't get a little more work on Sunday than he did last week. Because after halftime, he wasn't the primary back. It became Samaje Perine.
Right.
So do they extend Javonte Williams as the primary ball carrier into the second half, and there's a little bit more discrepancy between his touches and those of Samaje Perine? Keep your eye on that.
And that's where we come back to the meat on the bone conversation from Wednesday when everybody was talking about it.
By the way, the purple rain blazer?
Yeah.
I thought this was blue.
It depends. Camera angle.
Okay.
Right?
I mean, I thought this was kind of a royal blue.
It is a royal blue,
I do have
our guy Jason's been eating gummies all day, though, so you know, it might be purple.
I do actually have kind of a maroonish blazer that's
over there
in our closet.
Yes,
it were,
yes, and I do have a cowboy hat somewhere.
Yeah, where's the cowboy hat?
I think I took it home. I was thinking about that the other day because it wasn't hung up where I normally hang it up. Because I'm like, Richie wore it for the post TCU Prime. You know, everyone loves Prime, but either way, I'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. The Broncos perhaps figure it out by having larger roles for some of these other players. Figure out that meat on the bone to ground game, maybe more Javonte. But on the flip side, defensively, disappointing news. No Frank Clark. But is that no problem for the Broncos this week, Mace?
I think it's no problem. You just divvy up the reps a little bit differently. Maybe, Randy Gregory played, I think, about 70% of the snaps. Jonathan Cooper, 64. Nick Benito was down there. He played, I think, about 25, 30% of the snaps. I think you move him up a little bit. You get Thomas Incoom out there as well. Imagine he's going to be active, get him a few snaps. But Frank Clark, let's face it, last Sunday, Frank Clark was a non-factor in the game.
Yeah. And when people were surprised by Jonathan Cooper being number 1 on the depth chart, not if you were out at training camp.
I was going to say, you and I kept talking about Cooper every day.
Yeah.
And we kept saying that he's earned the work. You go out there when they went to San Francisco and played the preseason game against the 49ers in the Bay Area. It seemed clear to me that Coop had moved ahead of Frank Clark.
Mm-hmm.
Coop was taken out before Frank Clark. Coop and Randy Gregory saw their time done before Frank Clark and Nick Bonito did. To me, that was the sign right there. And yes, the rotation means they all play, but clearly based on what we saw in week 1, Randy Gregory and Jonathan Cooper were the alphas and not Frank Clark and Nick Bonito. And now you're without Clark for a couple of weeks with a hip issue. And we'll see what it looks like when he comes back, because if a couple of weeks is 2 weeks, as it should be, a couple is 2, I will not argue this, then he's back for the Chicago game, which is 1 week before Baron Browning can come back. But let's say a couple is 3 weeks, right? Then are you talking about Frank Clark and Baron Browning coming back at the same time for week 5?
Right.
Because that's when Browning can come off the PUP list. And then what kind of decision do you make in the rotation?
What kind of waves will you have as pass rushers if you have everyone at your disposal? And you and I have talked plenty about Frank Clark, and you've always alerted to and reminded me, like, Frank, if you get playoff Frank Clark
is transcendent.
Yes. Regular season Frank Clark, well, you saw in the preseason, he was dogging it. Didn't he play the whole game against the 49ers? Like, yeah, okay. Maybe you don't dog it in practice in the summer. You turn it on in playoff time. This team is going to struggle to push for that playoffs.
Yeah.
You got to turn it on now, baby.
Yeah. Otherwise, we're not talking about a playoff team. Now, big picture, you've gotten a couple of small to medium breaks that could help you. The Jets losing Aaron Rodgers, I think over the long haul, that probably takes them out of the wild card conversation. Buffalo looking a bit weaker. You know, you and I have alluded to Josh Allen. And,
yes. All the distractions for Josh Allen.
I didn't know you could have that many distractions in Buffalo. Actually,
what else is there to do in Buffalo?
You can have distractions anywhere. You can have distractions in Green Bay for crying out loud, right? So, but yeah, Josh Allen and Buffalo look a little bit wobbly, although they'll get Von Miller back at some point, and that's going to certainly help them out on the defensive end. Although
for sure,
defense wasn't a huge problem in week 1 for them, although you'd think they should have been able to hold down a Zach Wilson-led offense a little bit more. But then you kind of take a look around. The Chargers already haven't lost to Miami.
Chiefs were down.
Your Pittsburgh Steelers looked awful in week 1.
Against the 49ers.
Yes.
My best friend's a Bills fan, and when he called me, he's like, both of our teams lost. And I was like, well, at least the Steelers lost to a good team.
They lost to a good team, but they weren't.
And I'm not a Steelers fan.
But they weren't competitive. That's the thing.
That's very true.
But the thing that what we're talking about here is all these situations where maybe some potential contenders look a little bit weaker means that if the Broncos can get some breaks in their favor, they can fly through the attic window and be a wild card team.
Super, super quick. Do you believe that the preseason carries into September?
No.
Okay. I know some have floated that. Like the reason why we're seeing bad football, look at the Thursday night game, everybody. Turnover, bad play. Like the Eagles finally got it together against Minnesota, but that was ugly.
I think it doesn't carry over, but what we do see, because you have some teams with little or no playing time for their starters in the preseason, and you have fewer practices now than you did 20 years ago. I mean, 20 years ago, every other day was a 2-a-day out there at Mike Shanahan's training camp for the Broncos. Those days are gone forever. I should just let him go, but appropriate because we're talking about training camp. You referenced the lyric from The Boys of Summer.
Right.
It's also Friday. So the last show of the week.
It is Friday, and it is fun.
It's
chat room talking about Mace playing saxophone now.
Yeah. My daughter's taking up the saxophone.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you play any band? You had to be in band. No way was Andrew Mason not in band. I was in band.
I wasn't in
How
band.
can I be in band and you weren't in band? Come on, man. We're both nerds.
It didn't appeal to me. I don't know. My brother was in band.
Okay. What do you play? What do you say?
He played clarinet. My daughter was playing the flute last year in her school band. Now she's changed to the saxophone. I don't know why she changed. Maybe I think she probably just thinks the saxophone is cooler. She's kind of got that retro thing going, like 80s music and all that.
Right. That's good.
Yeah.
There's not always time for a good saxophone solo. By the way, Caleb says my hair makes me look like a founding father. Did you know one of my favorite Ben Franklin quotes is this? Imagination without implementation is hallucination.
Really? He said that?
He said that. Yeah. I've got it written down on my desk. I've got a note.
That's pretty profound.
It is. Hey, I could be a motivational speaker.
Let's not go there.
It's Tony Robbins, everybody. He's Andrew Mason. Follow him on everything at Mace Denver.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Have a great weekend.
I don't care if Monday's blue, Tuesday's gray, Wednesday too, Thursday. I don't care about you, but it's Friday. I'm in love.
And we're in love with you. Let's go Broncos, huh? Go kick some ass. Get it done. We're both picking the Broncos, by the way.
Yes,
You're picking the Broncos, right?
I am.
Okay. Why does everyone always wait? We said that on like Tuesday's show. I asked Stokely yesterday. He's like, "Oh, I gotta go answer that on Friday."
Like people
like
are
you
waiting.
Don't know.
Well, and also like people are waiting with bated breath for your pick. I mean, do people really care? I will put a score pick out there on Sunday morning.
Okay.
I like to do that. It gets everyone talking on a Sunday morning. But
yeah. And we actually have a score predictor tool at Football Guys. That's always fun to play around with. But I'm like, yeah, I'll tell you who I think's going to win. I think the Broncos are going to win. Now go get it done. Oh, yeah. Stay frosty.